Okay, welcome to Apgar on Air. I'm Conrad Drung, and I'm going to be your host today. Joining me today are Kash Mehdi, Vice President and Field CTO at Reltio, and Ala Oblos, CEO of Apgar. Kash, Ala, thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Conrad.
Yeah,
Uh,
excited to be here.
so, yeah, today we're going to be talking about a big topic, context intelligence. As organizations move from analytics to AI agents, access to data is no longer enough. AI agents, they also need that business context to know what to trust, which rules to apply, and how to act reliably. So, over the next half an hour, we'll define context intelligence, show why it matters, and discuss how organizations can build capabilities. Build those capabilities from capabilities they may already have. If you have any questions, feel free to use the question button down in the lower right-hand corner to ask us some questions. And with that, maybe we should get started. So, Cash, what's changed? I mean, as organizations move from dashboards to analytics to AI agents, why does that reframe the data foundation conversation?
Well, first of all, Conrad, thanks for having me here. Very excited to be partnering with Apgar. So we are seeing an inflection point in the industry, especially as AI has hit mainstream. What I see is the massive shift from organizations moving from the analytics era to the agentic era. And it's very important to define what that is, because in the analytics era, we've been used to making 100% of the decisions. Humans were at the helm making the decisions. But in the agentic era, you see more and more organizations are creating agents that requires sophistications, data foundations that should power their context to produce meaningful results. And this creates a interesting dynamic for many leaders out there that are focused on upskilling. It changes the status quo for organizations where data foundations is no longer just nice to have, but it just becomes a table stakes type of conversations. So I think this is where it's really important to actively think about when you are in the agentic era, what are some of the things that you need to have to make sure you're driving your business outcomes, whether it's customer experience, compliance, automating some of the tasks. So I'm very excited to speak and double click into some of these topics here, Conrad.
Ala, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, so I agree first with Cash that what changed really fundamentally is that we're moving from the fact that analytics was done for humans to AI agents that are supposed to act directly. And this brings, by the way, the challenge of how an AI agent can itself tolerate ambiguity like humans do, actually. So can it understand where the data is coming from? Can it understand what are the relationship between data domains, for instance? Of course, the response by default, it can't. So here, there is a tricky thing that is happening with our inside organizations. I'm seeing it with our customers. I see, for instance, that our customers think that as soon as they are having their data there, they are doing good with data analytics up until now. They are assuming that the AI engines will be able to perform. Well, that's a big mistake, actually, because without the context, AI won't be able to perform. Now, another way also to look at it, this time from a governance perspective, with analytics, data governance could sit downstream. Uh, Now, with AI, it can't, because before, actually, what was the worst scenario? Okay, you can have an issue with a dashboard. Okay, not a big deal, just fix it. With AI, an agent that is mistrained isn't easily caught, and even it can have a bad impact that cannot easily be undone. So data governance has to move upstream to make sure that we bring the right foundation for AI since the beginning.
And
So,
it's
no,
also just one point here, Conrad. It's also exciting, I think, a lot that data governance is now back in the mainstream where, hey, it's really important. It's no longer this boring, mundane, or like police action that, hey, who are you to tell me how to, work with my data? People used to think about, hey, this is just rules, regulations. It's no longer that case. It becomes table stakes. But great point.
so you've both talked about how organizations have this layer that they're already using, this data layer. And you've talked about context as a layer, you talked about governance, Cash. Thank you for bringing that up. I mean, you've used that term context intelligence. For you, what does that mean? And kind of what does that look like in practical terms? And then maybe afterward, Cash, you can chime in.
So to put it in a very simple terms, Conrad, enterprise context management is basically about governing everything that allows your data to be interpreted correctly. It's your business meaning, business knowledge, metadata, master data, reference data, all of that. So you want, of course, this context to be trustable, to be accessible, actionable, and reusable. Okay, so as a result, what you seek is to have a foundation that supports your augmented reporting, for instance, the contextualized insights, your AI products like Assistance and Copilot, and of course, the topic of the day to support agentic AI, where AI should be acting in an autonomous way. And I would like also to add that the context itself is also supposed to support humans. They can also be consumers of this context, because even though the question of context is easier to grasp by humans, it's still useful for a human to have a structured way to access to context. And because it will be a differentiator for humans to have access to the context so that they are able to assess where AI can fail and really play their role of validators, actually.
Cash?
Yeah, great point. I 100% agree with a lot of what you mentioned. I'm going to borrow what our CEO Manish has talked about when it comes to context intelligence. In simple terms, is just really a bridge that connects your AI models with your enterprise data. But just to double click into it, if you're a data leader, I think one of the biggest things that you have to focus on is to make sure you have correct digital representation, a machine readable representation of your business, knowing who are all your customers, what interactions they're having, what products they have, provenance, history, audit, semantics, all provided in a unified place so agents can reason on this. And today, I think it's also important to understand how we have traditionally worked. We've gotten used to this swivel chair technology. A human would look up about a customer in a CRM application, then go on another screen, ERP, look at product, supplier, and then go to support systems. Maybe customers have created some tickets, and customers also have access to a number of omni channels. Now, for a large enterprise, on an average, they have thousands of applications. Now, problem is for every business process, there's an application, and the data is the exhaust, right? The challenge is a lot of these organizations are struggling with this problem of data silos, where data is sitting in black box, sources without appropriate definition, quality, governance, quality guardrails. Now, imagine if you deploy an AI agent to connect across this scattered ecosystem, it is going to produce fragmented insights for you. And it's also important to understand, where does context layer sit in your organization? It's very simple. If you look at three chevrons, if you imagine three chevrons, right? At the bottom, you have data foundations, which is your core data ecosystem, where your core business applications, technologies that are moving, lifting, and shifting data to a warehouse and a reporting system. So this is really the data foundation. And then the second piece in the middle is the context layer, and I'll come to that. And at the very top is the agentic layer, where you have a lot of AI agents, LLMs, access to different technologies. And today we have an abundance of access to these technologies. Where most of the leaders have focused on is the top layer, agentic layer, and the bottom, the data foundation layer. What quickly everybody's realizing today is, hey, my agent, I can't just simply connect an agent to a core application and expect results, because agents are good at inference. They could produce facts from a specific system, but agent's not going to tell you, hey, I know who your customer is, but what problems are they having? That's in the support system. What products do they own? So this is where I think, going back to what Ala mentioned, it's really the connected ecosystem of your data, knowing your customers, what products they have, defining these relationships. We were building that context in our head. AI agents need that in a machine readable format. That's how you should be thinking about context intelligence, in my opinion.
So,
Yeah.
so if we talk about that layer, right, and let's think about this pragmatically, right? So if we look at, and many of our customers, right, many organizations already have invested in master data management, reference data management, data quality, metadata, catalogs, data lineage, governance tools. I mean, so, I mean, does this context layer demand another technology, or is it really about connecting and evolving what people already have? I mean, you've been working directly with customers on this. Like, why don't you tell us
Yeah.
what you think? Yeah,
Let's take an example on this. If you take
yeah.
the customer data, okay, what would context be in this case? It would be who the customer is, my recent interactions with this customer, activity history. So here we're looking at the long term, but also the short term memory, compliance restrictions of the customer, their market evolution, the subsidiaries that we work with at this customer, where the data of the customer is coming from, how we collect it. So all of these elements that I've listed now, you see they are actually existing already in the IT landscape here or there, and the building blocks that you have listed yourself. So the thing is not about throwing this away. At the contrary, you need all of this. But now the question, to continue what Cash was explaining, the question now is how I'm able to access this, how to make it accessible also for my AI, and how I connect them together. So all these tools are still important to build the future vision. But in addition, to make them accessible and connect them, they also should evolve. If I take the example of a data catalog, for instance, a data catalog that has holds business meanings, it helps also lineage on data. It can evolve in the future to be able to answer new questions like, is this data usable to train AI? Which is the best data to train an AI, specific AI use case? What are the metadata to add to make a data product usable in a successful way by AI? So you see, the idea is not to replace; it's really to add to what is already existing. And at the contrary, any customers who has organizations who has worked already on these building blocks, they have already done part of the job to manage their context.
Cash.
Yeah, let's say companies who are building towards context intelligence. Today we would just call it context intelligence because it's not about a new technology or ripping and replacing what's already out there. It's just really, as I think Ala mentioned this in a simplified way, where it's really about connected data, right? So a data catalog or in a master data platform, data quality, observability. If you look at the market, this whole change around AI itself, you see a massive consolidation happening. Why? Because a lot of these technology companies are also looking at what's the best possible way to serve this context so the business can answer questions. I'll give you an example. Like one of our health and life sciences customers, they have a training system where you have different investigators, part of different studies, right? And this information lives across different, of course, different systems and applications. So one of the first steps they have taken was to connect all of these data sources, unify them, right? And the second piece was, how do you enrich this particular unified data with relationships, and the relationships can have attribution. Now, how does that unlock context intelligence for them? They can ask questions like, hey, if you have an investigator that has taken this training 2 years ago, is that still valid for them to be on this particular research study, right? That's very important. And these are the type of questions that you could answer. It's all about connectedness, and then also being able to answer questions for you about your business. It could also be something where an agentic process, like in Reltio, we have an agent builder. Product recommender is one of the agents, which can look at all of the interaction history of a customer. If somebody is called into a customer service and inquired about a product, or maybe you have some data about your customer, maybe they're a big fan of drones. Maybe you can send them another upsell or what have you. Context intelligence, like if from our perspective, like this product recommender itself can tell you, hey, based on the interactions, here are the top 3 products with the confidence score, and here's the reasoning, different data points that arrive to this conclusion. So that's how I would describe that. It's also important leaders to know that there's a lot of convergence happening. All have a common pattern of how connected I can make this data visible, so you can easily know, what your data means, where it comes from, any questions, who to reach out to, your governance and quality guardrail. And that's all it is about. It's not so much about technology. It's just really a means to arrive to this intelligence that both humans and AI agents can work off of the same reality of truth.
But
just wanted to
so
add
yeah.
right here, actually. One thing that we have seen many times with organizations, that they try to solve this missing piece actually inside the AI use cases, okay? Which is really not the best approach, because the idea of a context is to be also reusable. So you cannot handle it. It's like you're putting business logic inside a front end, on your UI, for instance. You don't do that. Yeah, you need to hold it somewhere where you can reuse it. And this is where solutions like Reltio are really interesting. They are making your context first curated and then reusable, shareable, reusable inside your data and AI architecture.
But if we go back to Cash's comments, I mean, he talked about, like in the example for the pharma, he's talking about investigators, he's talking about clinical trials, he's talking about relationships, talking about products. I mean, does this mean that MDM is a critical building block of this context layer? I mean, what do you guys think? I mean, Cash or Ala, either ones can step in.
Yeah, I could chime in here. Yeah, of course, MDM is one of the critical points where why? Because in order for you to do anything with AI, you need to understand your business better, and MDM is a means that can help you understand who are all your customers, products, because you could have 5 different representations of the same product or customers. And I'll give you an example from a travel and hospitality customer. So I was in a meeting with the CIO there, and one of the things they said is pre-COVID, brokers who would sell holiday packages to customers will call in. So on the customer service side, people would look up this broker based on a phone number, and if the account exists, they would start to register these bookings. Now, post-COVID, what happened? These travel agents, brokers started having landlines and other means of communication. Now they call in again, right? So the customer service person, if they couldn't find this person by the exact phone number, because that was the methodology, they would just go ahead and create a new account, right? Now imagine over the years, the data decay, amount of duplication that's out there. So in this environment, if you connect an LLM or an AI agent, is going to give you all those, hallucinated answers, if you will. So this is really interesting that I see where context plays a key role for companies to think about the power of connected data, right? And I can give you more examples, but I'm curious to hear.
Yeah.
Your customers.
I focus on exactly the point, MDM role, actually. So I can already see the response coming from our customers. I have many customers from FMCG to utilities to insurance. They are all coming to us with a question that they got internally, actually, which is how can I use your master data for the benefit of AI use cases? They are getting this question internally on their side. So MDM importance is definitely there, and you can imagine why. I mean, after all, what we are talking about is managing customer data, material data, supply data. You need this kind of data to understand your business. You need it to run your business. So there is no magic there. And when I look at it also from an AI perspective, you will see the master data present in every critical use case you have. It's either about customers or suppliers or material or an asset. Yeah. So it's master data after all that is handled there. And now imagine AI working in an environment where this master data is fragmented. And even worse, it's inconsistent, contradictory. Definitely, AI will not be able to perform well. Yeah. So there is no doubt about the importance of MDM in the future and as an important part of this context layer. But that said, same to my previous point, MDM should also evolve. It shouldn't be about serving reporting purposes only. That was not a good approach in the past, and definitely is a bad approach also now with AI. Also, MDM should evolve to capture more data properties, and specifically here, I'm saying more about the business knowledge. And even last, I think that MDM is really a great data product. Yeah, but it's a great data product today to access curated data inside each data domain. Now, the thing is, AI needs more than that. It needs a layer where it can connect these data domains together. And this is where also MDM solutions should move to be able to cover for this kind of challenge.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to add one point because sometimes when you have MDM, there are also bad habits, Conrad and Alok, where if you're just mastering data for just creating this dynamic list of things or like just relationships and whatnot, it's not enough because what I would say fundamentally in the agentic era, you have to think about how this is going to power some of the automated tasks that you have. But if you're just doing classic MDM, that is not going to last in this new era. That's very important. And like I think what you mentioned with some of the examples that you have, like the same travel agency example, they have to master their data to really automate the experience for customers. And this is the new way of thinking today. And I see the same thing in data governance as well, where just documenting data or making sure, hey, I have a centralized list of definition, that is not enough. You need to think about how this is going to power some of your business processes and other things in the organization.
So I think we talked a lot about these like super concrete examples of how a context is being used by these systems and agents. I mean, so if we kind of move towards more pragmatic, like where do people get started? So like if all the building blocks exist but kind of are fragmented today, I mean, where should an organization begin? I mean, what's that practical path look like? I mean, although this is kind of your business, right? So do you want to share some advice? Yeah.
There's one thing actually today, we're getting a lot of those use cases today where there is a context of ERP modernization, especially moving to S4, from ECC to S4, or even from other ERPs to S4. And I was telling customers it's really an opportunity, this one, because you're reshaping a lot of things. You're remodeling the data, redefining the governance of the data. So take the opportunity to think about it from the perspective of enterprise context management. Yeah, but that's a note aside. Now back to your question, what is the path? The thing is, Conrad, there's not really like one path that is the correct one, and any company, every company should be able to follow it, because the path itself is really depending on how the companies are operating. Some companies have budget room actually to create foundations at the beginning. Others don't act like that. They need to have directly business impact, business use cases, otherwise they cannot move forward. So according to how companies are operating, the path itself is different. What I can tell you though, that when you define the approach, you need to combine two things, balance two things. On one hand, you need to be working on a specific use case, because the use case is telling you basically what you need to work on. What are the business entities that are important for you? What are elements of the context that are important for you to work on? So you need this, practical side of things to know what to work with. But at the same time, you don't want people to move forward and doing things without any framework, a common approach that will be able, to build for you something that again is reusable in the future. So on one hand, you need to approach it from definition framework, but at the other hand, actually, you need to move forward with a practical way. You need to combine those two. And ultimately, the goal is that you have something in three layers, actually. One layer, which is enterprise context management layer, where you define how you are governing your context. Okay. Another layer, the lowest one, let's say, is how I am sharing my context. And the part in the middle is basically the sum of every element that is allowing me to share my context. All together are building my enterprise context layer. So you're getting toward those three levels actually as you move forward, and it's never really on one shot. So use case after use case, you are building that.
Cash, do you have any comments about that as well, or?
Wow, a lot to unpack on this particular question. So I'll try to be as brief as possible. So I think what I would tell leaders today is like, look at the architectures that's quickly evolving today. So we have single agents confined within one application. That's evolving to agents talking to another agent that may be sitting across different applications. 3.0 of this could be a supervised network of agents that can coordinate, different special task, reinforce guardrails. Now, this is going to happen as quickly as possible because I'm already having conversations with leaders, big Fortune 500, 100 companies, if you will. They're actively building agents, a swarm of agents that is going to automate a bunch of tasks, right? And they also have human resource, developers, data scientists, and whatnot. So that shift is happening quite rapidly. Now, the challenge for many leaders is the window to get your data foundation right is closing faster than you think. Because today, one of the things that I would suggest leaders take is this spend the first 30, 60, 90 days, if you will, starting today to identify and curate a list of use cases. And use cases should not just be a bunch of complaints that you register from different business stakeholders, but just really, any use case, is this meeting my enterprise strategy, the business goals, can I achieve this, right? And I could give you examples from our existing customers who are gone through this journey. Radisson Hotel Groups, one of Reltio's customer, initially they've gone through this transformation journey and they've connected 52 plus systems, connecting data sources to unify information that could be fed into a number of things. But one of the first things they did was to identify 150 plus use cases. That was first exercise. The second was to build an operating model. Operating model is really about for all the people in the organization. And oftentimes I tell people, if you're assembling a group of leaders or experts in the organization, the diversity of this should reflect both business as well as IT folks. And if you're a leader, you build a great strategy and you early on, you see you're not getting enough attention from your business stakeholders, that's a massive red flag. So you need to start registering what's blocking you to build that operating model, because every use case that comes in on the conveyor belt, you have a sorting team, which is really your committee, that's going to make sure, hey, it speaks to the business strategy. It is something that could be automated with AI, embedded into our existing process, or can I buy it from a vendor, or can I develop something in our AI lab, right? So I would say there's a lot of work that needs to be done to make sure you identify where you need to go, and the use cases could facilitate that. Next thing is you have abundance of technology out there that then you can decide, hey, what technology can really help me enable that? And all of this could happen in parallel because there are many examples that you could borrow from across industries. You're not the only one with unique challenges, but there are lots of proof points in the industry. So I would highly recommend, shoot for the stars, know that there's agent architecture that's evolving, to a supervisory network of agents. Now, on the other hand, you got to get your data foundations right. To get this right, get the use cases, assemble the right team, and make sure you are constantly working towards getting to those stars, if you will.
That's really good advice. I guess, I mean, we could probably have you chime in a little bit. Although we are very much at time. What would you guys want to take a question or two? And again, if you have any questions, you can feel free to type them in. I mean, Olive, would you want to? I mean, I think, Cash, you talked about kind of the very pragmatic, what to do in the next 30, 60, 90 kind of days, how to get started. Well, actually, there is a question here about operating models, like where are some of the big challenges from a kind of people, process, and technology perspective? We actually have another question about measuring value or ROI. So, I mean, if you guys want to discuss any of those,
Yeah.
we should probably just do one since it's towards the end. Go on.
On the value,
Yeah,
I can, yeah, this one, by the way, you were talking
yeah,
about the challenge. When
yeah,
you were saying challenges, this is the first thing that came into my mind. So
yeah.
the value, because we are getting always this question actually from our customers, and they are always in difficulties to respond to this question and measure it. So what we thought there on at Apgar actually is that we should develop then a dedicated service to measure business value.
Mm,
And we go from two assumptions. First, that the value is not something that is self-evident. Otherwise, we wouldn't even be asking the question. So the goal of our service is to set up the conditions to observe,
mhm,
discuss, and manage the value. On a second assumption is that the value itself can vary from organization to another because not all organizations are the same and don't have the same strategic goals and operational constraints. So therefore, we have defined an approach of two levels. First level that we call the value radar, which decomposes the value into multiple dimensions like the cost, efficiency, the
mhm,
growth, compliance, adoption, long-term sustainability, so on. And so this part, value radar, it allows to recognize that the value itself is not one figure. Yeah, it's a balance of multiple things. And
yeah.
the second part is the what we call a fast scan of value, because you need to put inputs, measurements on those dimensions, and this is how we do it through this fast scan. So fast scan is a number of pre-configured, predefined questions and workshops and data points actually that we collect. This gives us those measurements that we put on the radar. With that, you get a radar that is a great tool for you to see where the value is. Okay, but at the same time, a very good tool also to compare your use cases and prioritize. So it's not the thing important again is that it's not like one figure you're getting.
Mhm,
This is not the value.
yeah.
Value is a balance of multiple things that you need to measure and look at in parallel.
Cash, do you have anything to add for that, or should we just go ahead and wrap up? I mean,
Yeah, I would just say, we certainly appreciate, I think, Apgar playing a good role in terms of designing that operating model for a number of customers. So that's always
yeah,
appreciated. That's what, brings value, a win-win situation for not just our partners. We have a
yeah,
wide network of partners at Reltio, but also the maniacal focus on bringing that experience and value for the customer. So I think, appreciated what Allah was sharing. One leaving thought I would give to many folks here is, and this is something sometimes I get ahead of myself explaining, technology and other things to leaders. What I've also realized, to tell you the truth, is not many of the leaders have ever designed what an agent is. Like, they could talk about it, what an agent is, but they have not built one. What I would advise is you got to have that literacy around at least building an agent, attempt to build an agent. What you would quickly realize in this exercise is your agent is as good as the foundation you're feeding into. Even you could go to Claude and you could create your own agent there. Maybe this is something that could reviews your documentation, your email communication, your
mhm,
style, but it's not going to produce meaningful results if you don't supply the right context. And that's the thought I want to leave you with. Maybe an exercise where you go build an agent that reminds your kids to drink more water, better food habits, or what have you. So that could be a good exercise, right? Very
yeah.
practical.
So really get out there, get that experience, and then through that experience, you'll realize the importance of the context that shapes the agent's thought. Look, thank you both. I thought it was a fantastic discussion. I mean, I guess the critical bit here is that the context intelligence layer is not just about kind of replacing, it's more about adapting kind of what currently exists within the organization and in that data foundation. And then of course governing it, and then as you eloquently said, like figuring out actually what the value is, and the stress is it's not just one number, it's actually a spectrum of different kinds of value that you can get. Well, listen, thank you for everyone that joined us today. We'll follow up with recording and additional resources, and if you have some questions that were unanswered, we will certainly respond via the email. Well, thanks a lot, and have a great day.
Thank you. Thank you, Cash.
Thank you.
Thank you, Karan.
Thanks. Bye bye.
Bye.